What if I told you that trying to optimize a profitable trading strategy like the TTM Squeeze could actually destroy it? Today, I'm going to prove this to you by taking the Slingshot Squeeze strategy, which made 50K using its default baseline strategies, and by over optimizing it, I turned that into a 14K loss. I'll walk you through the entire steps, and I think you'll be amazed at what you find through each step of the process compared to what you would expect logically. The end takeaway, if I was to summarize this in one sentence, sometimes the best optimization is no optimization at all. Now, to start this process, let me first give you the baseline. And to give you the baseline, I need to walk you through, well, how did I get to the baseline? So I focused this entire backtesting process on the Slingshot Squeeze indicator. This is an indicator that we built in our Squeeze course for all Volatility Box members. It's included for free with your membership. And up until now, we've had a nice, powerful backtester that's given us results of just one stock. Now, over the past few weeks, I've been spending a lot of time building together a bit of a larger report for some of the more liquid names. So here's what I did. I took 595 stocks, which were the most liquid, basically the S&P 500 plus an extra 100. There, I studied the data going back to 5 years on each of those tickers, seeing where did we have a slingshot squeeze, and manually tracking down all of the stats for this. Very tedious process, but that's how I got to the initial baseline stats. That's how I got to the data. Now, once I measured what this baseline performance was, I then started to splice and dice the data, which is the process I'll take you through, showing you all the different splices I did. And finally, that led me to, okay, so if I had one hypothesis or one theory, I would go test it. Once I tested it, I would then measure the new P&L, the new win rate. And once I had that, use that to fix the strategy, then use that to retest the strategy and go through this entire cycle again. And I went through this iteration multiple times trying to find the best strategy. And the numbers, the metrics, is what I'm going to share with you in today's video. So let's start first with the baseline strategy. So this is with no optimization settings. This is the default slingshot squeeze that we built together in the squeeze course, the yellow arrows that you see on the chart. So if we come back to the slingshot squeeze, over the past 5 years in these 595 some odd stocks, we've had a total of 630 trades, and the net win rate has been 59% blended across all 630 of these trades. Now the total profit, and this was using a 100 share basis, was 50,302, which I think came out to about a 10% return on the actual capital required to earn this 50,000. So not too shabby, especially when you consider that you didn't have to hold for a very long extended period of time. The average days in trade was 15.1. Now, if you looked at the average winner versus the average loser, this is where I had my first little red flag, which was the average winner was less than the average loser. So yes, while your win rate was greater than that 50% mark, which would make this okay, this didn't sit right with me. The fact that we were at a minus 9.6%. I also didn't really like the 59% win rate. If you followed any of our channel videos around the squeeze before, you know that there's a lot of strategies in which we find 70% plus win rates. So 59 was a little bit shocking. However, this was 59 across 630 trades, so it was a blended win rate. And I think that's actually quite decent for a blended win rate when you look at more than 600 symbols. Now, the next thing I did is I started to splice and dice the number of days in the trade. That was my next theory. Is if basically you get in and the squeeze starts to get going kind of quickly, is that better? Do you want the squeeze to fire almost as quickly as you enter the trade, as opposed to needing to stay in it? So that's where I started to break down the amount of days you actually had to be in the trade and what that led to in terms of winners versus losers, and then what that meant for the win rate along with the P&L. So here's the 0 days to 5 days breakdown from actually entering the trade. So this is, you didn't have to stay in the trade too long, just 0 to 5 days. There you had 177 winners, 48 losers, win rate 78.7%, positive P&L. So that's a good sign. Now, just like this, I started to test a few different permutations. So I'll show you all of them here. I tested the 6 to 10 days. And if you go 6 to 10 days, that takes you to 82 winners, 61 losers, a 57% win rate now, and still maintaining a positive P&L. Now, Now, as soon as you get to 11 to 20 days, that's where this P&L turned negative. And 21 to 30 days, the same thing. So to me, my logical brain was thinking, okay, well, really, the slingshot squeeze, if by the 10th day it hasn't fired, the squeeze hasn't fired, which is our exit, you should probably get out because it seems that the longer you have to stay in this trade, the worse it tends to be. The win rates go down, the probabilities go down, your average P&L is not positive either. Then finally, if you looked at the 30 plus days, there you had a nearly 50% win rate, 51.3, slightly higher, and you went back to having a positive P&L. But this positive P&L didn't really seem worth it to deal with this potential heat. That's what, again, my pragmatic brain was thinking. So if you're anything like me, right away, hopefully, your brain must be thinking, okay, so I'm looking for squeezes in which I want to get out quickly. And if that squeeze doesn't fire, maybe by the 10th day, I want to axe this position and maybe take an early exit. That's at least where my brain was going. Now, the next thing that I also wanted to test is what happened if you introduced the concept of stop losses. Would that help you improve this original 50K profit, this 50.3K profit? Could you improve that simply by adding in a stop loss and also skew this average win, average loss ratio a little bit more on your side by using a stop? So that was my theory. So to test that, I tried a few different stops. The first was a simple 3% stop. And what I found is as soon as you added a 3% stop to this strategy, you turn that positive 50K profit into a minus 28K loss. So right away, hopefully, that's like a light bulb moment for you. The traditional stop does not work here with the squeeze. You need to let this be a little bit more dynamic strategy, or at least a 3% stop doesn't work here. Now, your next question should hopefully be, well, what if you widen that stop? So what if you go from a 3 to maybe a 5%? Well, yes, you do improve your P&L slightly in that negative 28K to negative 4K, but you're still not doing as well as the baseline strategy, which is still coasting at the positive 50K. So now you wonder, okay, maybe a 5% stop is still too tight. What if I expand this out to maybe a 7% stop? Now, once you go to 7%, your P&L flips back to positive. So here, right away, the key takeaway, larger the stop, your P&L has more room to be positive, and it seems like you need to give your trade a large stop if you are going to have a hard stop at all. Now, even with the 7% stop, it doesn't beat the baseline of 50K. You still fall shy of that, 50K down to 13K, excuse me. Then I tested a 15% stop, which honestly at that point, why even have a stop, I think is a fair question that I asked myself. But with a 15% stop, that P&L still reduces down to about 41K. So that tells you that a stop or a hard stop loss doesn't seem to be the answer to optimizing the strategy. You're better off just keeping things as is. A traditional stop would have destroyed the strategy. Then we bring in the whole days in the trade. And so that was my next thing I wanted to test because that seemed like an obvious win. Simply exit the trade before you get to that 11th day. Now, if you had that strategy, then you went from 630 trades that we had to now 675 trades. So this was an increase of 45 trades because now you were getting in and out a little bit more. You had shorter time duration. Now that took your win rate down just a tad. Originally we were at 59 and some odd percent. Now we're at a 58.67%, so down about 0.38%. Not too bad. Now we go to the profit, seeing if this has changed our profit in a very positive light. Remember, we were at a 50K originally. The profit, if you were to have gotten out by the 11th day, still remains negative here with this strategy, negative 14K. That's a turnaround, or a delta rather, of almost a minus 64K. And the key reason for that, as I started to dive deeper, even though our average days in trade was nearly 9.1 less, just 6 days, was the fact that we missed out on a lot of big winners. If you look at the average winner versus loser, our average winner now is about 4.48%. This has dropped about 3.83%, but so has our average loser. We went from 9.6 to negative 5.6. In this process, though, we missed out on a lot of the trades, which ended up being some really nice winners, which did require you to stay in that 30 plus day period, or even were winners in that 10 to 20 day period, which contributed to this overall positive P&L of 50K. So even avoiding or getting out of this trade early didn't seem to help. So no matter which way I spliced and diced the data, and I went on to do a lot of different of these permutations, optimizations, just tweaking the strategy because I refused to believe that there was no way to improve this, all roads kept pointing to these three key lessons, which is what I wanted to demonstrate through this video through the data. One, don't over optimize. In some strategies, like this one, for example, the original strategy knows best, even with all of its flaws. If you remember, we started off by seeing that, at least in my case, I would have argued that this slingshot squeeze, the baseline strategy's flaws, were the fact that that 10 to 20 day period was not really a good place that you wanted to be holding on to this strategy. The second one was the fact that the average winner was less than the average loser, and we tried to skew that with stop losses. Nothing there tended to help improve these numbers. The baseline strategy was the best. So that leads me to lesson number 2, which is to respect the strategy's nature. It seems like this 10 to 20 day window where we construed that, hey, this is a time to avoid the squeezes, was actually a place in which a lot of these squeezes were developing. And we needed to respect that fact, let those squeezes develop because they contributed a lot to that baseline P&L. And finally, lesson number 3, which I'm hoping that this video helps communicate, test everything, don't assume. I really believed, at least at the beginning when I saw the baseline metrics, that making some of these few tweaks should have taken us from that positive 50K up to about at least a 75K. I was really daydreaming there. Very clearly, over-optimizing has its own set of risks, and this video and the numbers help prove that empirically instead of just relying on anecdotal evidence. I hope you found this video helpful for those of you looking to trade the squeeze and help share some ideas on how to make better use of the slingshot squeeze strategy. Take care, everyone. Good luck trading, and I'll see you in our next update.